Okay, I'm riding the struggle bus today with getting my AirPods to connect to my phone. All this has been really fun. All right, we are segueing a little bit today for video 6. Now, Christ came to save us from sin. Like, yay. However, that does not mean that we're like, oh, Christ came to give us from sin, so we don't really need to talk about sin too much. Now, we actually do. Now, I've always viewed sin in, this is an unpopular opinion, but a bit of a positive light, because if you think about it, sin speaks to us, okay? And when it speaks to us, it essentially lets us know that there is a correct path and a wrong path. I don't know a single person that I've talked to who has sinned and been like, I like this. I like the way this makes me feel. I like the way that, the direction it's putting my life. No, like nobody does that, okay? When we sin, we have those internal marks that are like, this isn't going to fulfill your life. This is not going to make you happy. So we need to acknowledge that. Now, sin should not allow us to fall into pits of shame. Every single creature in existence experiences negative stimulus. For example, if we were a plant, at some point when we were growing, we might have a shadow cast over us. If that happens, if we are going to continue to grow, if we are going to continue to thrive, we have to start to lean away from the darkness and into the light. It's the same thing. That speaks a lot about who we are, especially in our relationship with God. When we're experiencing a negative stimulus, often brought on by ourselves, you got to move, okay? Now, we have to focus on sin. We have to understand our sin. Just like, we need to really search inside of us, find that goodness, find that connection with God. You have to dig deep inside yourself and find that darkness too. We have both sides, okay? We have the dark twisty side, we have that super light side. They kind of intermingle with each other, they hang out, but we have to understand it, okay? So let me give you an example. Let's say that it's a beautiful day and you're like, I want to go outside and lay in the grass and just enjoy the sunlight. So you do. And when you come inside, your skin is red and uncomfortable and swollen, and you're like, I bet I got a sunburn when I did that. So you lather up with sunscreen the next time you go out and you lay in the grass and you're just like, oh, this is beautiful. But then your skin starts to hurt again. So you go inside and you're still bright red and you're just like, okay, well, I wore sunscreen, so maybe it's bug bites. So you spray yourself down with the anti-bug stuff, you put on the sunscreen just for the heck of it, and you lay back out in the grass. And you continue to break out. Lo and behold, it's because you have an allergy to grass. So the entire time you should have been laying on a blanket. However, if we don't search for it, if we don't try to figure out what the actual root of the issue is, we will have long-term negative effects. It'll be impossible for you to lean out of the darkness and grow towards the light. I have a struggle with anger. Now, the thing is, the anger is not the root. The anger is the, effect. I have to find the cause. And, sometimes as we soul search, we figure out, oh, pride is actually the cause, or envy, or lust, or sloth. One of these things is the root cause of the sin that is causing, the effect of something else. So if I only tried to work on not being angry, but I never got down to the root, I wouldn't be able to understand my sin and I couldn't grow from that, if that makes sense. So before I get into the 7 deadly sins, I want to talk about Dante's Divine Comedy. Now, as I talk about Dante's Divine Comedy, this is going to have your first writing prompt in it. I want you to take a piece of this Dante's Divine Comedy that stands out to you and journal about it briefly, okay? So Dante is at midlife. And let me first off say this. This is not like a catechism book. This is not like church law book. This is just a really great piece of writing that I think explains kind of a beautiful understanding of sin and hell and heaven. What happens is Dante's in midlife. The love of his life died, and he's basically at this spiritual awakening. And so he ventures through purgatory, he ventures through hell, and after he goes down, he goes up until he sees God, which when he looks upon God, God is just pure love. That's all it is, okay? Some of us, here's one of the big things, some of us do not have the capacity to understand something that could only love us. I know with myself, it is so much easier for me to think that someone would be disappointed in me or angry with me than it would to be, wow, that person just looks on me and loves me. okay? Some of us aren't there. This is part of our grappling with sin also. As we start to take these deep dives down, we can continue to grow upward, okay? So stay with me. Now, as Dante, after he passes through purgatory, he encounters the 7 levels of hell. And when he makes it to Satan, that's something very interesting. We'll get there. What Satan actually is, what sin is, what hell is. Now, when he gets to a level where he sees people who are grappling with pride. Pride is the number 1 deadly sin. It's said to be the most deadly. And these people are being humbled by having to carry boulders on their backs. The next level is envy. People who suffer from envy are actually blind, so they no longer can compare themselves to other people. He goes through wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony, lust, all of those different levels. And then he gets to go all the way down to the depths where he sees the devil himself. Something very interesting happens here. When he goes down to see the devil is frozen. This isn't like the idea of the devil that's often sold to us, like that creepy guy with the pitchfork just kind of running around wreaking havoc and being all like willy-nilly and stuff. The devil in this story is frozen. He does not care about Dante. He does not care about Dante's guide who's bringing him through this story. He's just frozen. The devil is completely turned inward, only consumed with himself. So if we think of hell, if we think about becoming an evil person, a person that, is disconnected from God, that's essentially what we get to. We see this devil in this story. He is frozen. He only cares about himself. He's only consumed with himself. He does not give a crap about anything that's happening around him. Now, these depths of hell were created because the devil had continued to burrow downward into the earth to get further and further away from God as he became more fully self-consumed. Now, I love this illustration that it gives of the devil, because that's essentially what it is. When we embrace an evil life, that doesn't necessarily mean we're walking around like hurting this person, hurting that person. It means that we become consumed with ourselves. None of our energy, none of our ego is turned outward, all looking inward on ourselves. Now, I have my little cheat sheet over here to make sure that I don't miss one. So when we talk about sin, what it means is to miss the mark, okay? Intentionally. You have to do it intentionally. So like if you are backing up in the driveway and you're like, do, and you run over the neighbor's dog, that's not a sin if you just accidentally bumped into the neighbor's dog. Now, if you were like, I'm gonna run that thing over, that's a sin, okay? You have to think it through, but it means to miss the mark with our behavior, okay? Now, the most deadly sin from which all other sin flows is pride. Now, Aquinas singles out that there's 4 ways that pride can manifest. Essentially, they all, in my opinion, they're all very similar. Pride is when we think that we are owed things simply because of who we are. We deserve it, or that we possess the ability to achieve and to gain these things for ourselves by our own capacity. So that means that we think, I am so incredible, that's why I have all this stuff, okay? That basically is us defining our own concept of existence. We are not embracing surrender. We're not embracing humility. We're not embracing other people. We're just basically like, I'm it. I'm number 1, which is the reason why the devil, so consumed with pride in Dante's Divine Comedy, is turned inward, looking only at himself. Okay, so pride is our number 1 sin. As I go through this, what your second journal entry is going to be is I want you to pick out one of these, whichever one speaks to you, and write about how you feel like maybe that sin is affecting your life. Okay, we all got probably multiple sins on this list that we struggle with. The next sin that is listed is envy. Now, this is what envy is. It's not just jealousy. It's not like, dang, I wish I had that purse that girl over there has. It's not just like, oh, I'm a little bit jealous. Envy is when something good happens to someone, even if you love them, but you wish it happened to you more. You cannot be happy for them. I've experienced this multiple times, especially when I was competing in sports, where a friend of mine would beat me because, you always have friends in your sports competitions. I did individual competitions, so I was on swim team and things like that. And somebody that I really loved and cared about would beat me, and I would just be like, oh, like it would eat at me. It was something that I was able to outgrow. But when you no longer have the ability to feel happiness for others by what they achieve because you want that for yourself, you want to be the one to have achieved it, that's when we're living in envy, okay? We need to be at a place in our lives where at the end of the day, we can lay down and we can think, what sin did I experience today? Was it pride? Was I thinking that I was owed certain things or I'd served certain things simply because of who I am or who I am, this self-made person? Or with envy, did a friend of mine succeed, or maybe even not a friend? Did someone succeed and I could not give them happiness? All I could feel was, I want that. Again, in Dante's Divine Comedy, people who suffer with this sin, their eyes are sewn shut, so they can no longer compare themselves to other people. Imagine for yourself for a second, if this is your sin, if this is the one that you feel like cripples you, imagine what would happen if your eyes were sewn shut. What would that do? If you stopped comparing yourself to other people, that can be so dangerous to live there, okay? Because it never allows you to be wonderful all by yourself, and it never allows other people to be who they were intended to be. We don't allow other people to be who they are. We don't allow them to have happiness if we want it absorbed into ourselves. Now, anger is the next of the deadly sins. And there is such thing as justified anger. So if somebody hurt one of your family members and you feel angry about it, that's fine, okay? If you are feeling angry, there's justified anger. So I don't want you to think that you're like, oh crap, I'm like a little sinner over here being mad at stuff. No, like there's justified anger. That was why with me suffering with, the struggling with anger, there was a lot that I had to dive in and understand about my anger. Your anger talks to you. Your emotions speak to you. They are there. They exist for a reason. And they are also a gift from God. They're here to tell you something about yourself. You have to listen to it. So there is justified anger. Anger is a sin when you allow the passion to blind your rationality. So if you say a family member was hurt and you feel angry about what happened to them, okay. If that anger walks you into, needing revenge, that's when it's deadly. If it brings you to a place where you cannot forgive, that's when it becomes deadly. Now, let me caveat for a second. When I'm talking about forgiveness with anger, I want to give an example, a dark example. Let's say that you're being abused by a person. It can be physical, it can be verbal, it can be, mind abuse, whatever. If you're being abused, you need to separate from that person. When I talk about forgiveness, I'm talking about the ability to still want that person to, to be loved by God. You still want that person to experience God's love. However, it is most acceptable for you to be like, I want them to experience God's love, but over there. You don't have to continue to, that's not what forgiveness means. It does not mean you have to continue to expose yourself to abuse. I want to throw that out there with sparkles, okay? So tuck that somewhere in case you need it later. Now, the next sin is sloth. Now, sloth is confusing because people are like, oh, well, some days the best day ever is a lazy day where I get to lay around. That's not what sloth is. Sloth is a boredom of your soul. It means apathy. If you're in the confirmation program right now, you might be fully experienced. You might be like, I'm here. This is awful. I don't want to do this. My parents said I had to. I do not give a crap if I have a relationship with God or not. That's what sloth is. Okay. Everything about our soul should be connecting. The way I look at it is the Christ that lives in your soul should be connecting with the Christ in others' soul. Your understanding of seeking God is not going to necessarily look like how your parents seek God, okay? Why am I stressing this? Because a lot of times when we are feeling this boredom of the soul, we have depression or sorrow when it comes to spiritual things, it's because we are trying to force our relationship with God to be like somebody else's. Now, I use my relationship with my husband as a comparison all the time because to me, this is one of the best ways to describe a relationship with God. I love Brad so much. We have a great relationship. Our relationship, though, does not look like my parents' marriage. It doesn't look like any of my friends' marriages. It's this beautiful thing all by itself. So when we start to talk about suffering from the sin of sloth, a lot of the time it stems out of confusion. Was this, my AirPods keep connecting and disconnecting, so hopefully this video, the sound's not janky. But anyway, a lot of times we just don't understand it. We're trying to make ourselves holy or spiritual in a way that we don't have to, okay? A lot of what I want you to search for in this confirmation program is understanding a way that you can connect with God. You can feel love with God. You can see God incorporated in your life, and it doesn't have to look like somebody else's, okay? So anyway, that's sloth. Now, the next one is greed. The fancy word for it is avarice. Now, greed is a twisted understanding of earthly things. That's what greed is. I might look out the window and see this beautiful landscape, this thing that is just like, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful that I get to see this. I love it. Somebody else who is suffering from greed would look at it and want it. They don't want to share it. There's nothing generous about material things. It is about ownership. You can have greed with so many different things, okay? Giving your life away through love is not going to make you happy when you're living in greed. Living and loving other people is not going to be the fulfillment. For people who live in greed, it's going to be about hoarding. It's going to be about a separation, mine versus yours. And there are a lot of people that suffer with this. This is something that if we do not keep it in check, it can fester. Every single human has a level of greed that I like to see as functional, okay? So I have a desire to have certain things because I want my family taken care of. I want to make sure they have a safe house. I want to make sure that I have a means to get them back and forth. So that's about survival. But whenever survival moves away from taking care of my family into I need to have more things than this other family or I'm not winning, that's when we venture into greed, and that's when it becomes damaging. Now, the next one is gluttony. Now, we think about gluttony specifically as like the unreasonable pleasure of food and drink. Ultimately, it's about our physical pleasure, just in general, like our physical body. We want to please our body. What our body wants, we want to give it. So that doesn't have to, lust and gluttony, they go similarly together, but not quite. But gluttony can be any sort of consumption or any certain addiction to something else, whether it's alcohol, whether it's sex, whether it's food. We're focused solely on pleasuring the body, and we're disconnecting the focus of the soul. We are soul and body composites, and this sin is when we focus on one. Now, when we move into lust is these are the only two sins that are concerned about our flesh. All of the other sins I've listed are soul sins. These two are concerned with our flesh. So with lust, there is this concern with the flesh to where we're using other people as items, okay? Lust can take place in marriage. People can be married to somebody and use that person for their own lustful desires and have no sexual love connection, okay? That happens. Porn is a perfect example of lust because porn takes a person and removes the sexual connection from them. They are just now something to watch. There's no connection there, okay? Sex is not bad. Physical connection with another human being is not bad in the right context. If you are in a relationship with somebody and you love that person and it feels different, like being close to that person. I love this person. You're married to this person. You have that physical connection with one another. It is a bonding. It is a connectivity, okay? We're looking for a connectivity with God. That's what all of this stuff's about. We are always looking for the connection. This is going to also trickle into our Trinity talk when we talk about everything being connected with each other. But that's what's meant to happen with sex. You are meant to be connected with another person. Lust removes the connection. That person is an item, okay? This also kind of ventures into the greed a little bit here too. An item for use. You might as well be a pencil that I'm writing with, okay? That's when lust becomes dangerous. Now, we need to acknowledge these sins in ourselves. So pick one of these to journal about. We need to acknowledge them. If you struggle with a porn addiction, being ashamed of it and hiding from it it's not going to allow you to be any better. We have to acknowledge what the root of the sin is. If you are struggling with lust, if you're struggling with envy, we have to call ourselves on it. We can deny every day and say, like, no, I'm not jealous of what my friends have. I don't want to beat out my friends. That's not true. I'm not suffering with that. You'll never grow, okay? If we're going to understand the relationship with Christ that we are meant to have, and we're going to understand what he's talking about, we have to get to know ourselves. We have to allow certain aspects of our personality to be purged, and we have to acknowledge, I struggle with this. I'm going to name it. I'm going to be aware of it. I may not be able to beat it every single day of my life, but I'm going to be able to move out of the shadow and grow more towards the light. So anyway, this is our sixth video in this series. I went out of order from my original intention, but I hope you enjoy it. I hope that the audio works so I don't have to reshoot this. And I hope everybody has a wonderful day doing whatever it is you're going to do. Bye.